Good. Welcome to Faith and Calm. We are in class 108, and we are 3 days before Lag Baomer. I can still say it, and it's still not counting the Omer, so we have to be careful about that. But yeah. Lag Baomer is coming. We hope to be in New York for Lag Baomer. So Shalom just loves the parade. She likes to go there, and that's what we'll talk about. We'll talk about Lag Baomer a little bit. Big subject, a lot of things to talk about there. Here, let's make sure I pin myself. Good. And hi, Amy. Lag Baomer. So, Lag Baomer is connected with two historical events. It is the day of the Hayulula, the wedding day. Well, it's not the wedding day. It's the day that, but that's what Hayula means. It means the day that the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai went to heaven. It was his day of his end of his work here on the physical earth. That was back in the first century, and it was also the day that the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. This is supposed to be a big holiday. And all Jews celebrated, as I think I said last year. It's an amazing thing. Sephardi, Ashkenazi, religious, not religious, and so forth. There's bonfires all over Israel. It's really a treat, when it'd be in Israel for Lag Baomer. Because I remember sitting in a restaurant with David, and from the window we could see like 6 bonfires going off, big ones, like 20 feet, flames into the air. It was like, whoa. They really do it big there. So those are real bonfires.
And what do they do with the bonfires? Do they just have them for light and for?
The kids are all lighting them. I don't know. It's like,
they're not barbecuing. Are they
That's what they're doing.
Do they barbecue or anything? And
no, not particularly. Although some people do barbecues too. It is a very festive day. A lot of singing, happiness, and so forth. I've been twice to Meron. And there it's dancing and music is really the event. So that was quite an event. Be with 600,000 of your best friends. It was quite a crowd. But that was the last time I was there was now over 2 years ago. So it's going to be different this year. It won't be as big as it used to be. So anyways, I was going to say a little bit about Shimon Bar Yochai. He was really, we don't know too much about it because he was very mystical. No, we do know a lot about him. He wrote everywhere in the Gemara where it says Rabbi Shimon. That means Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And he's also the author of the Zohar, which is the great foundational work of all of mystical Judaism. And we know some stories about him. For instance, we know that once he was sitting at a party, food fest, they were sitting and eating, he and Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, and they were discussing the Romans, and the Romans and the Jews did not have a good, easy relationship. And so Rabbi Yehuda was praising them. He was saying, wow, look at that. They build all these roads and bridges and roads and so forth. Yeah, well, they had taken over Israel, as my wife says. It's amazing, Colosseums, all sorts of other places and so forth. And they really built up the place. I mean, it's got a lot of infrastructure to it and so forth. So Rabbi Yossi was quiet, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, "They're not doing it for us. their whole intentions are for negativity. They build the roads so that they can charge taxes. They build their bathhouses so that they can pamper themselves, and et cetera, et cetera." I'm not going to say the other ones. And somebody finked on him and told the Romans, and they said, Rabbi Yehuda, who praised us, he will be honored. Rabbi Yossi will be sent into exile. And there's a death sentence on Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And as we know, that what he had to do is he couldn't go home anymore. He was afraid that his wife would be tortured. Yeah. So he went with his son, and they spent 12 years in a cave. This is we know about Shimon Bar Yochai. Now, why is this a story, and why does this tell us anything about him? Well, it really tells us something very important about him, and something important that we're going to discuss in this class, which is this particular class, which is the idea of there is this inner aspect of Torah, inner aspect of everything. You look at things externally, then you could agree with Rabbi Yehuda. But if you look at it internally, what is the intention? What is the design? What was the plan of the Romans? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was right. They weren't doing it for us. They were doing it because they were very grub, materialistic, and corrupt people, and so they were not doing it for anything good. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is really connected with this idea, the Pnimius Torah. So I'm going to explain a little bit about what that means in a practical way. What does it mean? The inner aspect of Torah. The inner aspect of Torah is looking at what is the point of all of this. I mean, there's laws and there's things we do, and there's celebrations, and when you do this and this and this and this. But what's the inner spiritual accomplishment? What are we doing here with a connection to Hashem? So, give a little picture of that. We all have to learn how to look at things. We look at things too much at the external, and that's our problem. We tend to think of it as I see it, I understood it, and that's what it is. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's teacher, Rabbi Akiva, if you know his story, you know that he really established this idea. He was really epitomized going deeper. Not really so much him, but his wife. Because who was Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva was a descendant of converts. Some opinions were he himself was a descendant of he was a convert, and he was a shepherd, and he was shepherding a flock of a very rich but very righteous and very pro-nationalistic man named Kalba Sabua. And that was him. He was 40 years old, and basically he had complete despise for any rabbis. He was not literate. He didn't know how to read, Rabbi Akiva. And he was a shepherd. There happened to be a daughter of Kalba Sabua, whose name was Rachel. And Rachel saw in him a potential for being a great leader of the Jewish people, who they needed at that time. The Romans had destroyed the temple. Kalba Sabua had been very much involved in trying to fund and help the revolt, but the revolt failed. And the Jews were in bad situation. The temple was destroyed and the country was a mess. And she said, we really need somebody to continue Judaism, and I think it's you. And she married him. And her father was furious at her, as we know the story. And he said, you're an intelligent, put together, refined person, and you want to marry this shepherd who's we're not even, convert. He doesn't know anything, can't read, and so forth. Why did you pick such a person? But she was adamant. She saw something in him. And Kalba Sabua said, if you marry her, I'm going to cut you off entirely. And he did. He cut her off entirely. So to the point that they were so poor that, yes? How poor were they?
They were very poor. They had to sleep on the.
They had one. Yeah, they had one. They only had one pair of clothes to share between themselves. They lived in a stable, and one of them would always be hidden under the straw at each time because both of them couldn't be out in the street at the same time because they only had one pair of clothes. So that's how poor they were. Right. You never heard that one before? Never. Okay. And she was favor of him, and so forth. And he was trying to learn, and he was breaking his head, and he said, and it's not working. Nothing is going in. I'm 40 years old. What do you want from me? And one day he happened to go by a stream. This is the point of the story. He went by a stream, and there the water was falling down on a rock. And you could see that where the water came down on that rock, there was an indentation. And he had an epiphany, and he said, whoa. If water, which is something that's very soft, can make a hole in something very hard like a rock, then you know what? Torah can make a hole in my head, and I can learn. Now you might say, well, what's the big insight? The big insight is that, what? And this is a good lesson for all of us. We try and think that, it's all or nothing. And if we can't really see how we're going to get to the end, we don't want to go there. Rabbi Akiva said, what? That hole wasn't made at once. It was made drop by drop by drop. And each time you try and you put a little effort into something, it makes a little hole. And you might not see it initially. You may not be able to appreciate it. But you know what? After a while, it actually does change the shape of the rock, and it makes a hole in it and so forth. So I am learning something, even though the first time, the second time, or the third time, it doesn't seem 40 years old. I'm basically who I am, and don't expect any big changes. And then he realized the lesson. No, I can be. My wife is right. So she let him. He went off to yeshiva. He came back with 12 years later,
And then 24 years.
20, and then 24 years later with 24,000 students. And he told his students, he said, everything that, I am now, he was one of the great leaders of the Jewish people, the great scholars of the Jewish people. And he told all of his students, he said, you have to give credit to this lady, because without her, you wouldn't be and I wouldn't be. All her doing. Which is right. She was the power behind all of this. She was the one that had faith in him. So this is the power of the Pnimius Torah. You don't look at yourself and you don't look at other people and say, well, that's what they are, and that I made a judgment on them, and that's all the potential that they are. We have things inside of us that we don't even know about. Rachel saw something inside of Rabbi Akiva. He didn't see that inside of himself. He didn't think he was going to be able to do this. You know what? Other people believe in us. We can, and if we believe in us, then we can accomplish. That's the lesson here. That's the lesson in Pnimius Torah, that there's something inside that you may not be able to put your hand around. It's more mystical. It's not really tangible that you can understand what's going on there. But nevertheless, it's very much there, and it's in there in every Jew, this potential to be able to be a transformer and a change agent for the whole world. I was going to tell another story. I'll tell the story because I think we have a little time. So this is a story I heard. It was about the Baomer Rebbe. He came here after World War II, and most of the Hasidic dynasties were destroyed. And he was living in the upper half of Manhattan, the Upper West Side, I guess. And it was hard to find a minyan of Jews who were for Shabbos. So he sent his son outside and to find a Jew. And he came across the guy. He found him, out in the streets. And he asked the guy to come in. And he joined the minyan. And he said, by the way, I used to be a chazan in the old country. Okay, so let's hear you sing. So he sang, and they were very impressed. So every week they would call him back, and he would be the chazan, and they were very impressed with him. I mean, he wasn't religious, he was clean shaven, whatever, but they didn't mind, Jew's a Jew. And this guy was accepted. But one week he stopped coming, and then the next week he wasn't there. So the Baomer Rebbe sent his son out to look for him, and he found him on a bench in Central Park, sitting there Saturday morning, reading a newspaper and smoking a cigarette. So the son didn't disturb him. He came back and he told his father, I don't think he's coming for Shabbos this time. His father says, no, he wants to come. He says, no, you don't understand, Father. And finally, he had to explain to him. He says, well, Father, I don't think he's coming. He's sitting there with a cigarette and a newspaper, and it's just not... It's not a real, he's gone back to his ways. He's not interested in this Judaism. His father says, no. He's not smoking a cigarette. He's not violating Shabbos. That's not him. And the son says to him, well, Father, I saw him. What are you talking about? It's not him. So the father says, no, that wasn't him. It was the Nazi. Meaning it was the Nazis that did this, the Holocaust that did this to him. This is not really who he is. Okay, so time goes on, and years go by, and like 20 years later, the Baomer's in Israel, and he says, come, let's go, we're going to a wedding. They come to the wedding. The son didn't know why they were going to this wedding, and the father tells him, he says, you see that guy there? He's the grandfather of the guy who's getting married. And see, like the grandfather, he's got payas, he's got a beard, it had an effect on him. His internal, the Baomer was right. It's an external expression of the person, not the pnimius, not the inner side that was being reflected here. And when you're warm to another person, or when you're close to another person, or when you warm up the Jew and so forth, all of a sudden the inner part comes out. And this is an insight, and this is a perspective on Lag Baomer. Now, I'll finish up with a couple stories, maybe one, maybe two. We'll see what we have for time for. Because I was listening to a long, what did they call it, kumsitz, and it was between Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson and the person called Shalom Rabashkin. Now, Shalom Rabashkin, if you don't know him, he was speaking, and Shalom Rabashkin was sentenced to 28 years in maximum security prison for bank irregularities.
Hey, thank you.
A bank irregularity. People who are murders for hire, as he said in prison. He said he met this guy, Jewish guy. He was a murderer, 12 years. For money, the guy did. And this was a statute that hadn't been enforced since 1929, and the bank was the one who actually wanted him to borrow more and more money. He didn't even want it, but the bank wanted all this material, wanted more money. So they told him, inflate your assets. And anyway, so they got him on this bank thing, which wasn't really his idea. It was the bank's idea, but the bank got scot-free. But they found this Jew and they threw him. It was in Iowa. There's reasons why they threw, why? Because there was money. He was making a lot of money, and the people in Iowa were jealous of that. The hog farmers and the other ones and so forth. So anyway, there was whatever that. I want to tell the story, though, the interesting story, which was some of his stories in prison were just amazing. So they threw him in prison. And the first thing they did is they gave him this orange jumpsuit, and they took away his yarmulke and his tzitzis. And he told them, he says, I'm a Jew. I don't change my customs for prison. He had a name. Actually, it's a book now that when he refers to it, he said, I was in a place they call prison, because he never saw himself as being physically in the prison. He said, I'm the same person. My body is in the prison, but my soul, who I really am, I'm still the same person. So he went in there and he said, that's how I'm going to live. And so he didn't pay attention, that physically they can do what they want to him, but on the soul issues, he's not going to change. So he tells them, he says, I wear a yarmulke, I wear tzitzis, I'm Jewish. I mean, it's the right of a prisoner and so forth. They weren't listening because rules and regulations of the prison. The guy tells him, listen, a lot of things are going to change. You're here in the prison. And he says, when he heard that, he said, I ain't changing. Not on this, I'm not changing. You're trying to force me to become a different person. I don't want to become in the prison. I am not accepting on myself, in effect, this idea that I am a prisoner. Because I just happen to be, I'm a Jew. Wherever I am a Jew. That's who I am. And I'm a Jew in prison, but I don't have to necessarily break myself and conform to what they're trying to do, which is crush you and force you into a certain mold. They said, I'm a Jew, I wear pride. So they called up a rabbi, and they said, the rabbi says you can take off your yarmulke and your tzitzis. And he says, I'm a rabbi. They say, you're not allowed to. So they said, fine, we're going to throw you in solitary. He said, do what you have to do. So they took him, they had to tie him to a chair, and they brought him, because he wasn't walking. Because I don't go out, I don't walk without the tzitzis. They threw him in the solitaire, and after a couple of days, it's like 6 o'clock in the morning, he couldn't get over his lawyer because they weren't letting him talk to the lawyer. And he tells them, he says, after a couple of days, he heard a voice outside the door. He says, who is it? This guy started asking him very questions. And he realized that this is probably a psychologist. They sent him here to find out if he's crazy or not. So after a few minutes, the psychologist said, you don't belong here. Goes back to the warden. And then 5 minutes later, he has his yarmulke and his tzitzis. And his lesson was as follows. He says, this is what it is, The world will listen to you. It may be difficult. There may be struggles. There may be things that you have to really stand up for and so forth. But nevertheless, if you show who you are and you are confident in who you are, then there's a God that runs the world. And that's the truth of it. And whether you're in prison or not in prison, whoever you are and wherever you are, you can overcome whatever the obstacle is. And he just keeps going on and on with these stories, and so forth. After that, they said, okay, fine. He tells them, he says, I need, every morning, I need to wash my hands with water. So they come and they bring some water from the bathroom. And he tells the guard, he says, no, you can't bring water from the bathroom for washing your hands in the morning. This is not done, And so it's not a Jewish thing. You have to bring water from a kitchen or something. And the guard goes, this is a prison guard, He's not like, what are you talking about? He says, listen, think about it, it's not you're going to pray, you're going to use water in the bathroom and so forth. Anyway, so the guy finally gives in and so forth. And he says it's a very interesting story. He was brought to an arraignment in another prison elsewhere. And they bring him in and he has to pray in the morning. And they put him in a room And in that room, he looks on the other side of the room where he's, saying Shachris, and he sees that there's a toilet there. So he tells them, I can't pray in this room. And the guard there was not very sympathetic. And he says, what are you talking about? Of course you can pray here, and so forth. What's your problem? And the other guy the guard who brought him says, no, you don't understand. This guy doesn't even use water from a bathroom. He's definitely not going to pray in a room with a toilet. And so the other guard had to agree. It was amazing. The guards are like, beginning to hop this idea, that he's like, he was in a different space. The other prisoners would berate him and say, "You're not even here, Mirbashkin," because they all. He's later sent to. There's that minimum security prison next to Sing Sing on Ossing, New York. I forget the name of it. Anyway, where there's a lot of Jewish prisoners, a lot of religious Jewish prisoners there, and they all had given up, on Halaf Yisrael and whatever kosher they could do and so forth, and they were looking at him and saying, how are you doing this? You keep your beard, you keep your prayers, you keep the davening and so forth. All of us are crushed. And we just give up to survive and do whatever we have to do in the prison situation. Rabashkin says that's the problem here. The problem is that you are allowing yourself to be in prison. You are allowing yourself to be in prison. I never said I was in prison. I'm in a place they call prison. But me, myself, who I am, who my panemius is, who my soul is, I'm not a prisoner. And in the end, that's exactly what happened. His case kept coming up over and over again. There were like 5 U.S. attorney generals who said this is a complete travesty of justice. And it was a complete political thing in Iowa. It was purely the Iowa political processes who got on his case and so forth, and that he should definitely not have gotten such a sentence and all. This is so funny. And it didn't, it went up. It went to the appellate court. It went to the Supreme Court, and then finally on Hanukkah he gets a message. He was leading the services there in the prison during Hallel, and they say you have a letter for him, and he picks up and he goes and reads the letter, and it says denied. And this was the 8th chance. This was the very last chance. So he basically realized, what? There's no, this is according to nature, it's over. There's nothing left anymore. This is the very last opportunity for any kind of appeal. So I'm stuck here for another 26 years. And that was one voice in him, but immediately he came back and he said, no, I learned in yeshiva. I said, it says, when, what does it mean to trust in God? Trusting in God means that when you don't see any particular way yourself, then you are completely in God's hands. So he realized, wow, now I'm completely in God's hands. There is nothing to do with the lawyers and the appeals or anything else. Thank God. I'm in his hands. He's in charge of the whole world. He'll have to take care of this. The next day, the 8th day of Hanukkah, this was the big thing, and so forth. The guard comes to the door and says, Rabashkin, you have to go to the warden's office right now. He says, why? He says, because you're being moved. So he thought, what happens in prisons? They move you from one prison to the other. He gets to the warden, and the warden says, the president has pardoned you. You have 5 minutes to get out of this prison. He said, wait a second, I got to get my towels and tools. He said, no, out. We're afraid of a riot, whatever, So they rushed him out of this place and so forth. And he realized, that was it. I was in God's hands. It was completely unexpected. His lawyer didn't expect anything of this. It was just completely out of the blue. And that should be for all of us, for all of our limitations and all of our imprisonments and all of our traps and all of the things that we're still struggling with. We have to, maybe we're not on Sholom Rabashkin's level, but a little bit we can be, because we just realize that we are not under the rule of nature and law or what's going around us or what's happened to us in the past. Ultimately, a Jew is connected in part with God. And if we live on that level and we acknowledge that level and we act on that level, then you know what? Things happen. Things happen. Things open up that you never could possibly have understood in your head. And afterwards, it might look like, oh, it was all well planned. And so it wasn't all well planned. So this is part of the miracle and why we celebrate Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who lived his whole life on that supernatural level, live in a cave for 12 years, surviving on carobs, buried to your neck in the sand, because your clothes have all worn out, and learning Torah the whole day long. This was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He lived on a different plane, on a different level of reality, and a different level of existence. That was him, but in a certain sense, he opened the door for all of us to do that in our day-to-day lives. Not necessarily breaking through and destroying our lives, but living on that level, even in the day-to-day things in our lives. And I am happy to turn over the camera and the microphone to my wife, who was going to continue with, I don't know.
Yefeskel Shimon, how long was he in prison for?
Rabashkin?
Yes.
8 years. 8 years.
8 years. And how long did he think he would be there
And
for?
he had like 12 kids, and, he didn't see most of them, most of his life, he had he couldn't even talk to them, they would only give him like about 10 hours a month, to talk to the family. It was a difficult situation. What was your question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
How long did he think he would be there?
Yeah, as far as they know, when the last appeal was rejected, he thought he was going to be there for like another 20 years.
Wow. That's amazing. Those are wonderful stories.
Yeah, it was like only 3-4 years ago he got out. It was I don't know, the whole world went crazy. The whole religious world went crazy for sure. They were just like, whoa.
On the last day of Hanukkah.
The last night of Hanukkah. This is like, what a Hanukkah miracle.
That's amazing. One more question about Rabbi Akiva. Did you say he was a convert, or did he have a parent who was Jewish?
So the general opinion was that it was his parents that converted, or grandparents who converted, and he came from Sisera, who was a arch enemy of the Jewish people way back. So that was the general opinion that generally you see in the Gemara. There is an opinion that he himself was a convert, but that's many of the greatest Jews came from that. Unkelos, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Meir, and so forth. They were converts, and they vitalized and gave energy to the Jewish people. Akiva was Akiva. Those after his students died, he went and found 5 new students, and their names was Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Eliezer. And from these 5 student disciples, basically, this is the whole oral Torah. And it all is based on what Rabbi Akiva, how he taught. The way we learn Torah today is really a Rabbi Akiva way. He was just like he watched with that water, drop, 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 drop. He would dig into each part of the Chumash, and he would pull out halachas and insights and meanings from slight changes in words and double words and this kind of words. And this is all his methodology. So all of the oral Torah is basically, it's Rabbi Akiva's gift to the Jewish people. One of the greatest of our rabbis of all time. So, and he lived to 120 years old. It was really an amazing lifetime. My wife has a great book on it. You can look it up, by Marcus Lehman, and it's got all the stories about his life and about his events. And we know a lot about Rabbi Akiva. He was really an amazing person. With that, yes.
They're wonderful stories. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Hi, Shlomo.
Good. Does anybody want to say anything before I begin?
Just hello.
Okay.
Nice to see
Oh,
you.
maybe I should get a throat candy. Okay, I'm going to drink one. So I'm going to start out. I don't think I'm going to speak very long. I'm going to start out with the 4 things that we usually start out with, which is that number 1, we're living in extraordinary times. We should not forget it. We should not slip into a mindset, this is just another year. No, these are extraordinary times. And why do we say that? Because Lubavitcher Rebbe, who made a tremendous amount of prophecies, predictions in his life, and he said we are entering into the stage of into the Geula, the redemption of the Jewish people in the world, and the Rebbe was never wrong. So I have confidence in this too. And the second thing is that we ourselves were from before the world was created. It was decided that you and I would live at this incredible juncture in human history. And third, we were given all the tools we need to navigate this time. We were given the Torah, which is our guidebook, and the mitzvahs, which are our power tools, and leaders like the Lubavitch Rebbe, who help us by giving us a higher perspective. And finally, what we're doing tonight advances the cause of the redemption. By simply learning about it, the Lubavitch Rebbe said that that the fastest way to speed up the redemption is to learn about it. I'm just going to close the door behind me. Okay, such a nice change of weather, no? Okay, so I want to start out by a 1-minute review of last week. Last week, I felt some very important things were said. And two of my favorite things that we came up with last week was, number one, don't define another Jew by their flaws. No matter how frustrating another person's flaws are to you, don't define the person by that, because God doesn't define a person by that. And I told a story about how there's somebody that I get very, very, very frustrated with, and because I think she's destroying her life, and it makes me very frustrated. And then on my mother's yard site, I had an insight. It was like all of a sudden, out of the blue, it was my mother's 18th yard site, and I decided, there's the candle burning. I'm going to introduce my mother to the characters that inhabit my life. And I said, Mommy, nobody was there except for me and the candle and my mother's soul. And I said, Mommy, this is blah, blah. And I introduced everybody by these incredible descriptions, because on her yard site, I was, I merited to go to a deeper level. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to see those people like that all the time. That's who they are. That's how Hashem sees them. And then Amy added a wonderful golden nugget last week, and she said something that helps her when she's dealing with somebody that you knock your socks off to give them good advice, and then you knock your socks off again and again and again, and they keep destroying their life. So how do you manage that? How do you? And so she said, you let go of the results. You do it. You have to do, and then you let go of the results. And I think that's an incredibly important piece of information, an incredibly important tool, because otherwise it's just too frustrating. So that person has their own time and their own piece of music that they're creating, and it's not your time. It's not your time schedule. It's not the way you envision things, but they're getting somewhere on their own time. It looks to you like they're not getting anywhere, but they are getting somewhere. So today I would like to talk a little bit about, yesterday was a holiday called Pesach Sheni. And the theme of Pesach Sheni, I won't go into how it came about. I won't go into the history of it. But the theme of Pesach Sheni is it's never too late. And there was a bunch of people who missed out on doing a mitzvah, and God created a special holiday just for them, because he was so proud of them that they desired a mitzvah like other people desire a new house or a new something else. So I want to continue that theme, the theme of Pesach Sheni. It blends in very, very well with Lag Baomer. Lag Baomer begins this Wednesday night. Don't miss it. It's one of the most spectacularly holy days in the entire year. Don't miss it from start to finish. Do good things on Lag Baomer. Fill it with goodness, because it is a tremendous thing. Yeskel Shimon and I went for Lag Baomer a couple of times to Israel. And as I might have mentioned before, there are people who fly to Israel the day before Lag Baomer. They stay there for Lag Baomer, and they come back right after Lag Baomer is finished from America. That's an amazing thing. and not necessarily religious people, but they know that it's an incredibly powerful day and they want to be there. So Lag Baomer is powerful everywhere. It's powerful in Crown Heights. My husband and I hope to go there. And anyway, so so with a lot of the personalities in Lag Baomer, the same theme is true. It's never too late. It's never too late to don't think that anybody or you or yourself are a lost cause in any way, because it's never too late. As Yeskel was saying, Akiva was 40 years old and he literally didn't know, he couldn't read an aleph. If he wrote an aleph on a paper, he couldn't read an aleph. He was, he had brilliant potential, but he was too poor. He never went to school, never learned aleph base, went to work right away as a kid. And as Yeskel Shimon said, Rachel saw tremendous potential in him and she created him. She made him into who he became. And he became the leading sage of his age. And not only the leading sage of his age, one of the leading sages of all time. It's never too late. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who is the other main figure of Lag Baomer, he came, it was never, how did he come to be even? He had a father. Shimon Bar Yochai means Shimon, the son of Yochai. Yochai was married to a woman named Sarah. And Yochai and Sarah, this is before Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was born. And Yochai was married to this woman, Sarah. She was extremely righteous. He was very, very righteous too. They were wonderful people, but they didn't have any children. And it's a very big deal to have children. It's a very big deal in Judaism to have children. So Yochai was thinking secretly, I don't think he had discussed this with her. He was contemplating, maybe we should split up. Maybe she should go to a new husband. She should find a new husband and I should find a new wife. We should get divorced. And because we're not having children and it's such a big thing to have children, to pass something on to. So she sort of understood what he was thinking. She had anyway been davening with tears, praying with tears for children for a while already. And when she realized this is what her husband's contemplating, she cried even more. And then, I forgot what holiday it was. On some holiday, Yochai had a dream. And in his dream, he was in an orchard, and a lot of the trees in the orchard were beautiful. They were flowering with fruit and flowers and fruit and everything. And he was but some of the trees in the orchard were dried up and barren. And he was leaning against one of the trees. And then he saw somebody come in to water the orchard. And the guy came with a bucket and watered most of the trees. And when he came to the tree that Yochai was leaning against, he put aside the bucket and he took a little saucer, a small little saucer filled with a little bit of water, and he poured it on the tree, this tiny little saucer of water. And the tree immediately soaked it up, immediately bloomed, had gorgeous fruit, gorgeous everything. It was an amazing thing. And he woke up. And he told his wife the dream. He felt it was a significant dream. And he said to the wife, but I can't figure out, it sounds like a good dream, but I can't figure out why did that guy who was watering everything in the orchard, why did he water my tree with a little saucer when he went with this nice big bucket to every other tree? She said, I don't know. But let's go to your teacher, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shimon was one of Rabbi Akiva's five main students. And let's go to your teacher, Rabbi Akiva. He's the leading sage of the generation. Maybe he'll have an idea. They went to Rabbi Akiva. They told him the dream. And Akiva said, I'll tell you why he used a little saucer. The water in the saucer is your wife's tears. And because of your wife's tears, you are going to be blessed with, you're going to be blessed with something that brings marvelous fruit. Go home. You're gonna have a child this year. Exactly what he said happened, and they had Rabbi Shimon. That's why he's called Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Bar in Hebrew is another word for Ben, son of Shimon, son of Yochai. And he grew up not only to be, he's one of the biggest rabbis, just like Akiva. he might even be bigger than Rabbi Akiva. I'm not really sure. I can't rate these people. But Shimon Bar Yochai is a giant, an absolute giant. The Zohar comes from him, and he's quoted an enormous number of times in the Mishnah and Gemara. And I want to tell just a little story about, he also merits that more Jewish people assemble for his yahrzeit. His yahrzeit is Lag Baomer. More Jewish people assemble in one place for his yahrzeit than any other occasion, any other place of the year. And the people who come there are a mixed multitude of Jews, every Jew of every kind of stripe. There are Hasidim, there are Litvish, there are non-from Jews, there are totally, people who, they're Jewish, they don't do anything Jewish, and they come, they flock. We all know about last year what happened, but every year they flock. There's hundreds of thousands who come, more than 600,000 come to Meron every year. This year it's going to be less because they're not allowing. So I heard, I'm sorry, I didn't review the story closely enough. I didn't review the story this year, but there was a rabbi, a Rav, who was coming home from Lag Baomer, coming back to America, big Rav, and somebody next to him asked him, "Tell me, why do you think, there's a lot of great rabbis, why do you think Rabbi Shimon merits that such a huge multitude comes for his yahrzeit?" By the way, Rabbi Shimon, when he authored the Zohar, and he brought down incredible secrets of the Torah, and he demanded of Jews that on his yahrzeit nobody should mourn. They should be happy. They should celebrate. They should sing. They should dance. Why? Because the secrets of the Torah that he said, I fulfilled my mission in my lifetime. This was my job. My job was to reveal the secrets of the Torah. And so you should be happy for me. And also, these secrets of the Torah are what will bring Mashiach, are what will bring Mashiach. And so why does he merit that so many people? I mean, how many of these people who go to Meron learn the Zohar? Very few. They may know Aleph Beis, they may know how to speak Hebrew. Some of them don't know how to speak Hebrew. They're not. They don't keep anything. Why does everybody merit? So this is the question that one rabbi asked this big rabbi on the plane. And the big rabbi looked at him and he came up with him. He said an amazing thing. He said, "I'm sorry. I'm making this story very short, but Rabbi Shimon had a very interesting opinion that was quoted many times in the Gemara and the Mishnah. He said that the most important that intention is huge. There are other rabbis who feel that what is actually done is huge. Rabbi Shimon feels that intention is huge. So Rabbi Shimon felt that he felt, for example, that if a person doesn't intend to do something wrong and they end up doing something wrong, it shouldn't count. And his opinion is honored in, for example, the laws of Shabbos. If you accidentally lean against a light switch and turn it on Shabbos, you've done nothing. Even though you're not allowed to flip on a light switch on Shabbos, you've done nothing because you didn't intend to do it. It doesn't count for anything. It's called lo miskaven. You didn't intend it. And so Rabbi Shimon is of the opinion that everything should, very many things should be considered that way. So this big rabbi said, every Jew loves him because of that. Because what Jew, the Jews, all of us, we do a lot of things that are wrong. We do a tremendous amount of things that are wrong in the course of the day that are not according to Torah. As this big rabbi said, but what you intend, they say, oh, I'm going to do this because I'm going to make Hashem angry. I'm going to go against this because I want to anger Hashem. No, a person does it because their cravings get to them and they have to have something, or they have to do something. It's a craving. It's something else. It's not an intent. They don't intend to violate when they go about and they do it. violations, because not because they intend to violate the Torah, it's because they're listening to their, their cravings or something like that. And so this big rabbi said, what Jew is not going to be crazy about Reb Shimon? Reb Shimon said, "Lo miskavin is not, should be nothing." It's not nothing. The entire Torah does not go by Reb Shimon, but people enjoy this rabbi who gets them. He gets me. Yeah, I do a lot of things that are wrong, but he gets me. It's not because I want to do things that are wrong. I just want to do what I like to do. So, anyway, Rabbi Shimon is a very, very big personality. I want to say one last thing, that I forgot to tell you that last week I told a very, very nice story. I don't know if you were here or not. I'm going to very briefly go over it, very, very briefly, because I left out the punchline. And the story was, and anyway, it's worth going over, because what this family did is something we should all do. Now, I told a story about this poor rabbi in Israel. Somebody liked him and gave him a gift card worth 600 shekels. And I think that was like $170. It was worth about $170. And this poor rabbi decided, I'm so excited. My wife has always wanted a food processor. My kids never get toys. I'm going to split it between the two of them. He came home, he told them all about it. And he said, we're so lucky we have this gift card. Then he went to find it. He could not find it anywhere. He had lost it between the time it was given to him and the time he came home, and he couldn't find it. And so he said, my children, everything Hashem does is great. We have to dance over this, because who knows? Maybe we deserve that something terrible should happen to us on Pesach. Instead, we lost the gift card. Let's dance, because everything that comes from Hashem is good. So let's dance and celebrate. So he got his whole family into it, and they all danced and sang. A few days, he didn't find the gift card. A few days later, he sees a congregant. The congregant is blue as blue can be. And anyway, the congregant explains to him that, I'm an older single. I was engaged. After so many years of looking, I finally got engaged. And a couple of days ago, the one I'm engaged to texted me and said, it's off. She said, I'm not interested anymore. It's off. And he said, I'm destroyed. I'm absolutely destroyed. My life is over. I finally found somebody who liked me and who wanted me and who I liked. And so the Rav told him the story about the missing gift certificate. And he said, look, I'm just giving you a piece of advice. Do what me and my family did. Let's get up, let's dance and sing, because if Hashem did this to you, and Hashem does everything, Hashem is the author of everything, it's good. So let's dance for the good that's in it. And let's say, thank you, Hashem, that this happened, because if it's from you and everything is from you, it's good. And they sang and danced. And as I said, a day later or so, he got a call from the woman, and she said, and she asked him how he was, and he said, I'm terrific. I'm terrific. He didn't say it in a nasty way. He just said it as a statement of fact. I'm doing well. I'm terrific. And she said, really? She said, and she said to him, let me tell you that that the reason I broke up with you is that somebody told me that you might have an anger problem. And I expected after I sent you that text, you were going to storm over to my apartment and scream and yell at me. You didn't do anything like that. And now I call you a few days later and you say that everything's wonderful. She said, let's reconsider. I want to go forward with this thing. And the punchline that I left out last week, he was so happy when he told the rabbi the story. He said, and I'm giving you lost a gift card. I'm giving you a gift card for 2,000 shekels, not for 600 shekels. You can buy your wife a food processor worth 1,000 shekels, which is $300 something, and you can buy $300 something worth of toys for your kids now. So singing and dancing over the apparently bad thing was great for both halves of the equation. So I'm doing it. I'm doing things like that all the time, and I think it's a marvelous, marvelous tool for everything. It's just such a marvelous tool, and the faster you do it, when you recognize that there's something bad, seemingly bad, the faster you do it, the faster the solutions come. So,
I suggested that to somebody after hearing your story.
yeah,
Somebody was going through a hard time. I suggested that they dance. You know, I don't know that they did, but anyway, it was a good remedy. You know, it's a good.
we can take that remedy ourselves, like, yeah, as we were talking, we don't know if somebody's going to pick up that advice and
Right.
go with it. We ourselves can be smart enough to do it. So,
Right. And I think we also understand that Judaism is that being joyful in Judaism has a lot of impact
yes,
on what happens to us
Yes.
and in
Yes.
turning things around. And if you
Yes.
understand that, then it's easier to think of doing it.
yes. As Rabbi Friedman, Rabbi Manis Friedman says, when you're happy, you're like a magnet. Good things come to you. It's the truth. It's the
Mhm.
absolute truth.
Oh, that's nice. That's lovely.
Okay, so I'm going to end this class early, and thank you all for coming, and I look forward to seeing you again. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Thank
thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm turning them
Thank
in
you.
for a second. Okay.
Oh,
Thank you.
you're good. Thank you.